My name is Tony, and this is Karen. If you have any questions about this assembly process, feel free to call us and talk to one of our very helpful customer service representatives. Okay, are you ready? First, you'll want to make sure you've cleared a good workspace for your assembly. It'll be easier to keep track of the small parts. We recommend a carpeted area like this one. Ensure you've got everything you need before you begin. Locate the left side lifting column or leg and the left side frame end. These should be labeled just like this. Put them both on either side and fit them together. Grab two of the longest machine screws, they're the ones with the flat tips, and thread them in part of the way to hold the leg in place. Flip this over to the other side and thread two more large machine screws in the same way. Now stand the leg upright, grab the left hand side bracket and insert it in the back. Grab two more of those long screws and thread them in through the top two holes. Once all screws are in place, go ahead and tighten all 6 so that everything is nice and locked down. Now repeat these steps, but for assembling the right side leg. Set these in the frame end with 4 screws and attach the side bracket with 2 more and tighten everything down. Now that you have both legs assembled, it's time to attach the desktop. Place your desktop top side down on a padded surface. Find the front of your desktop by finding the 4 holes close together at the edge where you will be mounting the crank. When you attach the legs, just keep in mind that since everything is upside down, the left leg should go on your right-hand side and vice versa. Don't worry, everything will make sense when you flip the assembled desk over. Place the right leg assembly onto the desktop first. Align the frame with the pre-drilled holes on the desktop. Now, attach the leg assembly to the desktop. Please note, if your desktop has metal inserts, you will need to use the machine screws packaged with your desktop to secure the frame. Just like the frame end, insert all 5 screws part way. Once they're all in place, tighten them completely. Now, slide the center rails into the frame end attached to the desktop so that the midpoint mark is facing up and the cutout slots are facing inward. Now, grab that left leg and slide that onto the other end of the center rails until the entire frame fits onto your desktop. Secure the left leg with the remaining wood screws, just like you did for the right side. Insert each screw without tightening them all the way. Then, go ahead and bring them on home. Center the labeled midpoints on both center rails between the 2 frame ends, and use 8 of the medium machine screws to lock the center rails down firmly. Remember to get these screwed nice and tight. Failure to do so could result in stability issues. That's the driving rod. Those are the driving rod sleeves. Now we're going to put together Jarvis's drive shaft. Make sure the set screws on the driving rod sleeves are aligned with each other and are loose enough to allow the rod to slide into the sleeve completely. Place the assembled drive shaft between the 2 rod ends extending from the lifting columns. Then, slide the sleeves onto the rod ends, making sure all set screws are facing up and aligned with each other. Once the drive shaft is assembled, tighten all 4 screws, not too hard, to lock them in place. We now need to decide which side the hand crank will be on. For our desk, we'll assemble for right-hand crank placement. Insert the long crank rod in the crank socket on the right lifting column, marked R, and be sure the raised notches go inside the leg. For left side assembly, insert the shorter crank rod, that's the 125mm crank rod. Using 2 wood screws, attach the adapter plate, making sure the left or right label matches your chosen orientation. If you have a Jarvis desktop, use the widely spaced pre-drilled holes. To connect the rod to the frame, first slide a crank spring washer, then the crank spring itself, and finally the second washer onto the crank rod. orient the crank sleeve so that its set screw is closest to the leg and accessible, and slide it onto the crank rod. Slide the crank all the way into the crank sleeve, making sure that the pin on the hand crank rod lines up with the notch in the crank sleeve as shown. Fit the plastic arch-shaped crank bushing onto the crank sleeve. Attach the plastic crank bushing to the adapter plate using the 2 smallest machine screws. Loosely attach the feet to the bottom of the lifting columns with 4 large machine screws per foot. For maximum stability, don't tighten them down until all the screws are in place, then tighten them down the rest of the way in an X pattern. Double check that all screws everywhere on the desk are tight. With a friend, lift the desk and carefully flip it onto its feet, being especially careful not to put weight on the hand crank. Finally, adjust the pre-installed leveling glides on the feet as needed. And now for the best part. Enjoy your Jarvis.